The vase shattered against the wall, sending ceramic shards and tulip petals scattering across the hardwood floor. "You don't even know her, Mom." James's voice echoed through the house as Elizabeth Reynolds stood frozen, immediately regretting her outburst. Her son's face contorted with a fury she'd never seen before, not even during his rebellious teenage years. 3 months. You've met her exactly 3 times, and you think you can judge her entire life? You think those rumors give you the right to? He stopped, choking on his words. This is why Dad left, you know. Your constant need to control everything, to make everyone's decisions for them. The words cut deeper than any knife could have. Elizabeth felt the air leave her lungs as if she'd been punched. Before she could respond, James grabbed his keys from the counter. "The wedding is happening with or without you there. Your choice." The front door slammed so hard that the family photos on the entry table trembled. One fell, the glass cracking across Elizabeth's smiling face. That was yesterday. Now, Elizabeth sat in her car outside Olivia Wilson's apartment building, clutching the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. The ticking of her turn signals seemed to match her racing heartbeat. James wouldn't answer her calls or texts. 24 hours of silence that felt like an eternity. She hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her son's face, the hurt and disappointment. How'd everything fallen apart so quickly? 6 weeks ago, James had called to tell her he'd met someone special. 4 weeks ago, he'd brought Olivia to Sunday dinner. 2 weeks ago, they'd announced their engagement. And yesterday, Elizabeth had ruined everything by confronting James with what she'd heard about his fiancé's past. Elizabeth turned off the ignition and took a deep breath. She was here to fix this, to talk to Olivia woman to woman without James as a buffer. To find out if the rumors were true. To protect her son if they were. To apologize if they weren't. Elizabeth checked her reflection in the rearview mirror. At 52, she still maintained her appearance meticulously, shoulder-length auburn hair perfectly styled, makeup subtle but precise, not a wrinkle in her cream-colored blouse. Control. That had always been her refuge. But James was right. It had cost her a marriage, and now it threatened to cost her a son. The lobby of Olivia's building was modern but modestly appointed. Elizabeth pressed the button for apartment 3B with a trembling finger. "Hello?" Olivia's voice through the intercom was cautious. Elizabeth cleared her throat. "Olivia? It's Elizabeth Reynolds. James's mother. I was hoping we could talk." The silence stretched so long that Elizabeth thought Olivia might not respond. "Then, I'll buzz you up." The elevator ride to the 3rd floor gave Elizabeth time to rehearse what she would say, but all her carefully prepared openings evaporated when Olivia opened her door. The young woman looked terrible. Her normally vibrant face was pale and drawn, dark circles shadowing her eyes. Her chestnut hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she wore an oversized sweatshirt that made her petite frame seem even smaller. "Mrs. Reynolds," she said, her voice flat. Not the "call me Liz" that Elizabeth had insisted on during their first meeting. That bridge had been burned. "Thank you for seeing me," Elizabeth said, feeling awkward and too tall next to Olivia's small frame. "May I come in?" Olivia stepped aside without a word. The apartment was small but tastefully decorated, a far cry from the chaotic space Elizabeth had somehow imagined. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with well-worn classics and medical texts. Simple artwork hung on the walls, landscapes mostly, soothing blues and greens. A half-empty cup of tea sat on the coffee table next to a stack of journal articles. It looked like the home of someone studious and thoughtful, not the party girl Elizabeth had been led to believe Olivia was. "James isn't here," Olivia said, clearing space on the sofa. "He's staying with his friend Mike." Elizabeth nodded, sitting stiffly on the edge of the couch. "I know. He won't return my calls." Olivia remained standing, arms crossed over her chest. A protective posture. "Can you blame him?" The words weren't spoken unkindly, just matter-of-factly. Elizabeth felt shame creep up her neck. "No," she admitted. "I can't." She looked up at the younger woman. "That's why I'm here. To try to understand. To hear your side." Olivia's eyebrows rose slightly. She clearly hadn't expected this. After a moment's hesitation, she sat in an armchair opposite Elizabeth. "What exactly did you hear about me, Mrs. Reynolds? What was so terrible that you felt the need to warn your son away from me?" Elizabeth shifted uncomfortably. Spoken aloud, it would sound petty, she knew. But she'd come this far. "I have a friend whose daughter works at Memorial Hospital. She said you were involved with a married doctor there, that you were asked to leave your residency program because of it." Olivia's face remained expressionless, but Elizabeth noticed her hands tighten in her lap. "She also mentioned that you had problems with substances." This part was harder to say. That perhaps your career change from medicine to pharmaceutical research was not entirely voluntary. Olivia was very still for a long moment. Then she stood abruptly and walked to the kitchen. Elizabeth heard the tap running, the clink of glass. When Olivia returned, she carried 2 glasses of water. She handed one to Elizabeth before sitting back down. "Did your friend's daughter mention Dr. Richard Townsend?" Elizabeth blinked, surprised by the direct question. Yes, I believe that was the name." Olivia nodded, as if confirming something to herself. "And did she happen to mention that Dr. Townsend was the director of the residency program? That he had authority over whether residents passed or failed their evaluations? That he had a history of mentoring female residents that no one talked about?" Elizabeth felt her stomach drop. "No," she whispered. "She didn't mention that." "I was 26, Olivia said, her voice steady, but her eyes focused somewhere beyond Elizabeth. "First-year surgical resident. Working 100-hour weeks, sleep-deprived, trying desperately to prove myself in a department where only 20% of the surgeons were women. Dr. Townsend took a special interest in me. Extra training sessions, special assignments. I was flattered at first. Grateful." Her laugh was bitter. "By the time I realized what was happening, he had isolated me from the other residents, made me dependent on his approval. When I finally rejected his advances, he claimed I'd been the one pursuing him, that I'd been offering sexual favors for better evaluations." Olivia took a sip of water. "As for the substance problems, I was prescribed anxiety medication to deal with the stress and harassment. Medication that Dr. Townsend himself recommended. When everything fell apart, he suggested I'd become dependent on them. It was his word against mine. 3 years of medical school, $200,000 in student loans, and my dream was over in a matter of weeks." Elizabeth felt ill. The rumors she'd heard suddenly took on a completely different meaning. "Why didn't you fight it? Report him?" Olivia looked at her directly now. "I did. The hospital conducted an internal investigation. They found insufficient evidence of harassment, but offered me a settlement with a non-disclosure agreement. I was broke, devastated, and alone in a city where I had no family. I signed it." Elizabeth's mind was racing, recalibrating everything she thought she knew about the woman sitting across from her. "And the pharmaceutical research?" Olivia's expression softened slightly. "That part worked out, actually. I still wanted to help people, even if I couldn't be a surgeon. I'm now developing pain management protocols that don't rely on opioids, trying to prevent addiction rather than just treat it." There was quiet pride in her voice. "I've been with the company for 3 years. I have publications, patents pending. I've rebuilt my life." She paused. "And then I met James." For the first time, a genuine smile touched her lips. He was giving a talk at a conference, Architectural Designs for Healthcare Facilities. We started talking about how physical environments affect healing. He listened to me like what I had to say mattered. The accusation was subtle but clear, unlike you. Elizabeth flinched. She remembered how dismissive she'd been when Olivia had tried to discuss her work at that first dinner. How she'd cut her off and changed the subject. "James doesn't know all the details," Olivia continued. "Not because I'm hiding anything, but because it's painful to talk about. I was going to tell him everything after the engagement, when the time was right." Her voice wavered slightly. "I guess that time is now, whether I'm ready or not." The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken words. Elizabeth stared at her untouched water glass, processing everything she'd heard. She had come here expecting, what? A confession? Tears? Denial? Not this dignified, measured account that rang with truth. "I love your son, Mrs. Reynolds," Olivia said finally. "I would never hurt him intentionally. But I understand if you can't accept me, if you've already made up your mind about who I am based on rumors and half-truths." Elizabeth looked up sharply. There was no self-pity in Olivia's voice, just resignation. The kind that comes from being judged unfairly too many times. Elizabeth thought of her own life, the careful image she maintained, the community standing she'd cultivated after her divorce, how much appearances mattered to her. How quickly she had believed the worst about this young woman rather than giving her the benefit of the doubt. How easily she had potentially destroyed her son's happiness because of her own prejudices and fears. "I was wrong," Elizabeth said suddenly, the words tumbling out before she could overthink them. "I was completely, utterly wrong, and I am so sorry, Olivia." For the first time, Olivia looked truly surprised. Her composure cracked, just slightly. "What? I should have talked to you directly instead of ambushing James with accusations. I should have given you a chance to explain. I was afraid." The admission cost her, but Elizabeth forced herself to continue. Afraid of losing him. Afraid he was making a mistake. Afraid he didn't need me anymore. The tension in Olivia's shoulders eased somewhat. "He does need you. He loves you very much. That's why he was so hurt." Elizabeth nodded, blinking back unexpected tears. "I know. I've always been controlling. My husband, James's father, used to say I tried to arrange people like furniture until everything looked perfect from the outside." The old pain surfaced briefly. "When he left us for his 28-year-old assistant, I promised myself I would never let anyone hurt James like that again. I became overprotective, too involved. When he told me about your engagement after just 6 weeks of dating," she shook her head. "I panicked. And then when I heard those rumors, it seemed to confirm all my worst fears." Olivia was watching her carefully. "That I was taking advantage of him? Using him? That you would break his heart," Elizabeth corrected. "That it was happening all over again, someone charming and attractive sweeping a Reynolds off their feet only to destroy them later." Understanding dawned in Olivia's eyes. "You thought I was like your ex-husband's assistant." Elizabeth gave a small, embarrassed nod. "It wasn't fair to you. I was projecting my own fears, my own past onto your relationship. James was right about that." She set down her water glass with a decisive click. "I want to make this right, Olivia. Tell me how. Please." Olivia uncrossed her arms, her posture softening for the first time since Elizabeth had arrived. "First, you need to talk to James. He needs to hear this from you." Elizabeth nodded, dreading the conversation but knowing it was necessary. "And second," Olivia continued, "if we're going to be family, which I hope we still can be, we need to start fresh. Get to know each other properly, without assumptions or rumors getting in the way." She hesitated, then added, "And maybe you could stop calling me, the fiancé, when you talk about me to your friends. I have a name. I have a story. I'm a person, not just an extension of James or a role to be filled." The criticism stung, but Elizabeth recognized its truth. How many times had she referred to Olivia that way? James's fiancé, as if that defined her entire existence. "You're right," she said quietly. "I'd like to know your story, Olivia. The real one. Not just what other people say about you." For the first time, a genuine smile transformed Olivia's face. It was radiant, lighting her eyes in a way that suddenly made it very clear to Elizabeth why her son had fallen in love so quickly. "I'd like that too, Mrs. Reynolds." "Liz," Elizabeth corrected gently. "Please call me Liz." The ringing of Olivia's phone interrupted them. She glanced at the screen, then back at Elizabeth with newfound tension. "It's James." Elizabeth rose immediately. "Take it. Tell him I'm here if you want. Or don't. Whatever you think is best." Olivia hesitated, then answered the phone. "Hey," she said softly. "Yeah, I'm okay. Actually." Her eyes met Elizabeth's. "Your mom is here." She listened for a moment. "No, it's fine. We're talking. It's good, actually." Another pause. "I think you should come over." We all need to talk. She ended the call and looked up at Elizabeth. He'll be here in 20 minutes. He was already on his way. He couldn't stay away another night. Despite everything, Elizabeth felt a surge of pride in her son. Of course, he wouldn't abandon Olivia, even in the midst of his anger at his mother. She hadn't raised him to run from conflict. Do you want me to go? She asked. Give you two some privacy? Olivia shook her head. No. We need to clear the air, all of us together. But before he gets here. She walked to a small desk in the corner and returned with a photo album. I want to show you something. The album contained photos of a younger Olivia, in a white coat at her medical school graduation, smiling broadly with an older couple Elizabeth assumed were her parents, hiking on mountain trails, reading to children in what looked like a hospital ward, laughing with friends at a beach. A life fully lived, with accomplishments and joy and purpose. My parents died in a car accident my second year of medical school, Olivia explained, pointing to the couple. My dad was a high school science teacher. My mom was a nurse. They remortgaged their house to help pay for my medical school. Her finger traced their smiling faces. They never got to see what happened with my residency. Maybe that was a blessing. She turned the page. This is my brother and his family in Colorado. We're close, but he has 3 kids and a demanding job. He wanted me to move there after everything fell apart, but I needed to stand on my own. Each photo revealed another facet of Olivia Wilson that Elizabeth had never bothered to discover: her volunteer work, her close circle of friends, her love of the outdoors. I want you to know, Olivia said, closing the album, that I understand your concerns. 6 weeks is fast. If I had a son, I'd be worried too. She looked directly at Elizabeth. But what James and I have is real. When you know, you know. And we're not rushing into marriage. The engagement is just a promise. We're planning a wedding for next summer, after we've had time to build a life together. The doorbell rang before Elizabeth could respond. Olivia rose to answer it, and Elizabeth heard the murmur of voices in the hallway. Then James appeared in the living room doorway. He looked almost as tired as Olivia, with stubble darkening his usually clean-shaven jaw and his clothes wrinkled as if he'd slept in them. He stiffened when he saw his mother. Mom. The word was neutral, neither welcoming nor hostile. Elizabeth stood, her heart beating painfully against her ribs. James. Thank you for coming. Olivia touched his arm gently. I've been telling your mom about us. About me. His eyes darted between them, confused and wary. What exactly is going on here? Elizabeth took a deep breath. I came to apologize to Olivia. And to you. I was wrong, James. About everything. His eyebrows shot up in surprise. Elizabeth Reynolds rarely admitted to being wrong about anything. The rumors I heard, they were distorted, taken out of context. Olivia has explained what really happened, and I believe her. James looked to Olivia for confirmation. She nodded. We've been talking. It's been good. He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. So just like that, everything's fine? After what you said yesterday. No, Elizabeth said firmly. Nothing is, just like that. I hurt both of you with my assumptions and accusations. I didn't give Olivia a chance. I didn't trust your judgment. I behaved exactly like the controlling mother you accused me of being. She stepped toward him, stopping just short of reaching out. I'm truly sorry, James. I was protecting you from a threat that didn't exist, and in doing so, I almost destroyed something beautiful. She glanced at Olivia, who gave her an encouraging nod. I'd like a chance to make it right. To be part of your lives, if you'll let me. To be the mother, and the mother-in-law, that you both deserve. James's expression remained guarded. You really mean that? Because I won't let you hurt Olivia again. I won't choose between you, but I won't let her be disrespected in my presence, even by you. Elizabeth felt a fierce pride in her son's protective stance, even as it was directed against her. I mean it. And I respect you for standing by her. You're a better man than. She stopped herself. You're a good man, James. I'm proud of who you've become. Something in his face softened. What changed your mind? Olivia did, Elizabeth said simply. She told me her story. The real one. And I listened, really listened, for perhaps the first time. Olivia approached them, taking James's hand. Your mother and I have found some common ground. We both care about you. We both want what's best for you. She smiled up at him. And we've agreed to start fresh, to build a relationship based on who we really are, not on assumptions. James looked between them, hope and skepticism warring in his expression. Just like that, he repeated. Not just like that, Olivia corrected gently. It's a beginning. We have a lot more to talk about. All of us. She looked at Elizabeth. Including some things I haven't told you yet, James. About my past. He frowned slightly. What things? Olivia squeezed his hand. Let's sit down. It's a long story. Elizabeth moved toward the door. I should go. This is private, stay, Olivia interrupted. Please. If we're going to be a family, there shouldn't be secrets. And I could use a mother's support right now. The words hung in the air between them, an olive branch, a tentative bridge across the chasm Elizabeth had created with her accusations. She nodded, throat tight with emotion, and returned to her seat on the sofa. Over the next hour, Olivia told James everything about Dr. Townsend, the harassment, the false accusations, the settlement, the career change. Elizabeth watched her son's face cycle through shock, anger, and finally a deep, protective tenderness as he pulled Olivia close. Why didn't you tell me sooner? He asked softly. I would have understood. Olivia wiped away a tear. I was afraid. Afraid you might see me differently. That you might wonder if there was some truth to his accusations. James shook his head firmly. Never. I know who you are, Olivia. This doesn't change anything, except that I'm even more in awe of your strength. He glanced at his mother. And I understand better why Mom's accusations hit so hard. You've been judged unfairly before. Elizabeth felt the full weight of her mistake anew. I added to that pain, she acknowledged. Instead of being another woman who believed in you, I became another one who didn't. She looked directly at Olivia. That stops today. From now on, I'm in your corner. Both of you. James studied his mother's face, searching for sincerity. Whatever he saw there must have satisfied him because he nodded slowly. Okay, we start fresh. All of us. The tension in the room gradually dissipated as they continued talking. Elizabeth learned more about how James and Olivia had met, their shared interests, their plans for the future. For the first time, she saw them not as her son and the stranger who had appeared in his life, but as two people who complemented each other beautifully. James's practical nature balanced Olivia's idealism. Her emotional intelligence softened his occasional bluntness. They finished each other's thoughts and supported each other's ambitions. By the time they ordered takeout for an impromptu dinner, Elizabeth found herself genuinely enjoying Olivia's company, her quick wit, her compassion, her resilience. I'm thinking about reaching out to other women from the residency program, Olivia mentioned as they cleared away the empty containers. The settlement had a non-disclosure about the specifics of my case, but it doesn't prevent me from talking to others who might have had similar experiences. There's strength in numbers. James squeezed her shoulder supportively. You could make a real difference. Elizabeth nodded thoughtfully. I might be able to help with that. I'm on the board of the Women's Business Alliance. We have connections to every major hospital in the city. Olivia looked surprised. You'd do that? Absolutely, Elizabeth said firmly. What happened to you is wrong. No one should get away with abusing their power like that. As the evening drew to a close, Elizabeth felt both exhausted and oddly exhilarated. In the space of a day, she had nearly lost her son, confronted her own worst tendencies, and possibly gained a daughter in the process. There was still much to repair, trust to rebuild, but the foundation had been laid. At the door, James hugged her, a real hug, not the perfunctory embrace they'd shared in recent years. Thank you, he whispered. For coming here. For listening. Elizabeth held him tightly. I'm sorry it took me so long to do it. When they separated, she turned to Olivia. May I? She asked, opening her arms hesitantly. Olivia stepped into the embrace without hesitation. Thank you for giving me a second chance, Elizabeth said softly. I don't deserve it, but I'm grateful. Olivia pulled back, her eyes serious. Everyone deserves a second chance. It's what we do with it that matters. Elizabeth nodded, taking the gentle admonishment to heart. I won't waste it. I promise. As she walked to her car, Elizabeth looked back to see James and Olivia standing in the doorway, his arm around her shoulders, both waving goodbye. They looked right together. Meant to be. She had almost destroyed that with her prejudice and fear. Never again, she promised herself. From now on, she would listen first, judge last, and remember that love, real love, deserved her support, not her suspicion. The next morning, Elizabeth woke to a text from James. Dinner at our place Sunday? Olivia wants to show you her famous lasagna recipe. Our place. Already they were creating a shared life. Elizabeth felt a pang of something, not jealousy exactly, but awareness that her role was changing. She was no longer the primary woman in her son's life. That was as it should be, she reminded herself. She typed back, I'd love that. Can I bring dessert? His response came quickly, Mom's apple pie? Olivia's never had it. Elizabeth smiled. There was still a place for her, just a different one than before. As she moved around her kitchen, the sight of the broken picture frame on the entry table caught her eye. She picked it up, carefully removing the photo from behind the cracked glass. She and James at his college graduation, both beaming with pride. A new frame, she thought. A new beginning. And perhaps soon, a new photo. One that included Olivia. Elizabeth placed the photo carefully on the counter and began gathering ingredients for her apple pie. Some traditions were worth preserving, even as they welcomed new ones. This Sunday would be the first of many family dinners. Not perfect, perhaps, but real. And that, Elizabeth Reynolds was finally learning, was far more valuable than perfection.